And I think we are live. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Hello, friends. Welcome back to another edition of Together at Home, the webcast series from Buffet Crampon, USA. My name is Matt Vance. I am the Woodwind product specialist. And as you can see from these friendly confines, I'm actually doing today's webcast from my house, which is how we started doing these back in April. We're kind of doing a little return to form here. And I am thrilled to be joined by one of my favorite people in the whole world, Clarinet or whatever. She's joining us from her home in Texas. It is clarinet artist and clarinet goddess, Paula Corley. Paula, how are you?
Gosh, I'm going to have a lot to live up to. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, and thank you for making the old lady feel really good. Fun to be here.
Let me know when the old lady joins us, because I don't see one on here right now. So how is everything with you? What we have done with these webcasts, and you and I were talking about this when we were getting ready to go live, is that we really like to find out from our artists what they have been doing since everything changed with the pandemic and with lockdowns around the country. Maybe fill us in a little bit before we get started talking about some of the other topics, what you have been doing personally and musically since the pandemic really kicked in back in March.
Wow, that's a tall question, right? You know, I think for me, there was a period of adjustment because it was just very strange being cut off from everybody. My university went fully online around right after spring break. So that was a pretty big learning curve, trying to all of a sudden switch to online lessons. A little frustrating for me, frustrating for the kids. We tried to make the best of it. This fall, we're still virtual, and it's going to be much, much better. Now we have a plan. But I would say emotionally, it was just very strange. And I found out really quickly that I didn't like texting anymore, that I wanted to see people face to face. So it was great after we all figured out that we need that face-to-face contact with our friends and our students and so forth. So now doing what you and I are doing is just commonplace and very uplifting. Personally, for me, this is my studio and I can't move the computer around so you can see the whole thing, but I moved out some furniture, and this is funny, but my husband bought a weight bench and we have some barbells. So he's determined to make my arms look better. So I've been trying to take good care of myself and exercise. And, you know, I think that's really important to do, to get up, take a walk. If you don't live in Texas, you can probably walk. But here in the afternoon, it's like 107 in the shade. So we stay inside a lot, but just trying to take care of myself. Musically, wow. You know what? I think this has really focused my practice. I figured out that through the years, I probably have wasted time instead of using it exactly the way it should be done. So now I've really organized my practice. Like yesterday was interval day. You know, I'm trying now not to cover the world in one session, just one thing at a time. This morning was Even Fingers Day, you know, with the patterns that promote fluidity in the fingers. So I've been very specific, you know, with what I want to do and trying to rotate. But for me, I just enjoy playing. So it doesn't matter if it's an etude or an exercise or what, I don't know. I guess you would say I'm pretty much addicted to clarinet. So it's not hard for me to be motivated to practice, but I know it is for a lot of people. I wish I had an answer for you.
Well, I think that's a terrific answer. And I think it speaks to a lot of what people have been doing during the pandemic. One thing that I thought was very important that you pointed out in your personal routine is that you have been selecting a different topic or a different focus each day to really work on with your playing, to where you're not just picking up the instrument and you're playing and you're flailing and you're not really getting anything accomplished. Where it sounds like with your focus of a particular aspect of your playing every day, you're really setting yourself up for success. I think that's terrific.
Well, and for me personally now, I've been doing this a long time. So it's very enjoyable for me to practice. Of course, there's nowhere to play, but that's okay too. Most of the stuff I do with others is chamber music. I really enjoy that. I've been lucky. I've had 2 commissions, actually 3 if you count my Pink Floyd tribute, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But I mean, really had some fun. So now I'm at the point that I can just like be Paula, I think, and not worry about it. I think it's good for everybody to find. I think the people who are the most successful, the big names, we can name off tons of those people, they have something about them that's unique. They bring something unique to the table. So I think that's really important.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. One thing I do want to remind our viewers, and if you're just joining us, thank you for tuning in. We're with our special guest, Paula Corley. Today's session is a little bit different than some of the other sessions that we've done. And Paula has been gracious enough to offer her services. And this is a giveaway that we're going to do at the end of today's webcast. You can see with her lovely presentation there, the email address. So this is how you enter. And Paula, do you want to explain to our viewers how they can enter to win?
Yeah, so to make it completely fair, let me tell you what we're doing. I would really like this to go to a group. So it could be any school group, university group. Maybe you have a Woodwind methods class. If you're a private teacher and you have a large studio, that's okay too. This is really for a group. So if you fall into that category and you're a current teacher and you have a group of students that we could meet with, and you get to pick the subject, whatever it is that you want to talk about on clarinet, we'll do it. So I want you to send me an email, paula@clarinetcity.com. That's where you send it. In the subject line, put masterclass. And that way I'll know that it's someone entering. And in the body of the email, just put your name and the school that you're from and anything you think would be important for me to know. And I'll bring this up again so everybody can see this. But when we get ready to draw, what we'll do is I have a random number generator. So I will put in from 1 to how many ever emails I get, and we'll click the random number generator. And then let's just say it lands on number 2. Well, I'll scroll down and I'll find the second email, click, and there's our winner. So it's completely fair. I'm not even going to look at who is sending stuff in. So do it now, okay? Paula@clarinetcity.com. And I promise not to spam you with a bunch of replies and put you on any mailing list. I don't do that. So
Okay, very good. Paula@clarinetcity.com. And we'll remind everyone of that address again later in the webcast. And we also have it as a pinned comment on today's webcast as well. You can find it there too. Before we get into our discussion about selecting an instrument and why it's so important to have a process, as we talked about earlier with a practice routine, there is a specific process when it comes to selecting an instrument. We'll get to that in just a minute. Along with today's giveaway and the fact that we are in a brave and strange new world as far as doing a lot of online interaction and a lot of instruction, I think it's so terrific that you're offering this free masterclass for someone. Have you been doing some of these outside of your private students with other teachers and other studios and students? Have you done any of these prior to this?
yes, absolutely. It's been a lot of fun. I'm trying to remember who all, Texas Tech with my dear friend David Shea, Wichita State University. We did some things with the ICA when we had our virtual get-togethers. I guess you could call it a conference. We did a wellness session and how to deal with COVID. We're still all trying to how to deal with that. And so I've done a number of those, and I've got another one coming up that's going to be recorded with some other people that Matt knows really well, Cecilia Kane and Ixie Chin, and I believe Jenny McClay. And we've assembled Cecilia has a terrific panel of international people. And we decided we wanted to talk about something good. So without giving too much away, I'm giving her a free promo, right? It's going to be called Silver Linings. And we're asking everybody to give us something positive that how it has improved them, the situation that we're in at the moment. So that'll be coming up soon. But no, I think it's a terrific way to share ideas and just to lift each other up, and particularly kids. And going back, and if they're not in school, a lot of the schools are virtual. It's kind of tough to learn an instrument at home without hands-on, someone there to help you. So I'm hoping I can do that for somebody.
I think that's a real challenge for teachers. As you know, my wife is a middle school and high school band director here in Jacksonville. And one of the challenges that she has dealt with, and I think most educators have dealt with of all levels, is not being able to have that personal interaction, the physical interaction, to where you're able to say, okay, well, your embouchure, you need to do this, or your hand position, you need to do this. And I think it's been helpful in a way, because we've been able to step back and kind of look at things a little differently. And I think that's something that you've been able to do with the master classes online that you've already done, and probably a little self-examination too with your personal practice routines.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I interviewed Boris Alakavadian, whom we all love. It's one of my favorites. If you haven't heard him play, you should go to YouTube and download some of his recordings. He's just a lovely person and a lovely player. And I asked Boris how it changed his life. I mean, because after all, he's the principal in LA. That's a big deal. They're not playing, they're not doing concerts, they're not doing anything. And Boris took such a positive approach. He said, you know, Paula, he said, this is a time of self-reflection. And he said, we've all been given a gift, you know, so we shouldn't waste it. And self-reflection, not only musically, but personally, you know, what you want to do going forward. So it's an opportunity for that as well. So I agree with him. It's very much a good time to reflect on how you're doing things, where you want to go. I think this being the pandemic, is going to change how we make music, how we produce it and receive it. And I think it's going to be probably here to stay, a lot of these changes.
Yeah, definitely. I do want to tell you, we have some Buffet Crampon artists and friends tuning in this afternoon that are sending their regards. Chris Coppinger says hello from New York.
Hi, Chris.
Donnie Todd, who you know from his time in Texas, he's our Southeast Division manager. He says hello there. And
hey, Donnie.
We've also got Lori Orr sends her greetings from the New York showroom. Of course, we're being hosted on that page. And Keith Coons is tuning in as well. Hello, Keith. And Lynn Musco, our Buffet Crampon artist at Stetson University, sends regards as well. She's joining us. So.
Excellent. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. If you are just tuning in, we're with Paula Corley. She is a Buffet Crampon clarinet artist. She is one of the authorities on clarinet pedagogy. She has a fabulous website called clarinetcity.com that you should definitely check out. She also has some incredible method books that I need to get into as a saxophonist who is terrible on clarinet. And the one that I'm very interested in is your new book called The Break, which, as a saxophonist, the break is a 4-letter word for me. And I really need to get into this book and work on my technique as far as getting over the break. You maybe talk a little bit about that book and what your inspiration was at first. I think the title is fantastic because it says everything you need to know about the book. But what was your inspiration in writing that book and coming up with that material?
That's a really good question. It's kind of an interesting story. I was approached by Southern Music, and the owner, sadly, who just passed, Lauren Kaiser, was a clarinet player. So it was really great presenting this to him because he was pretty much a critic, because he was a clarinetist. And one of the things that he told me is that he hated the clarinet and quit when you started adding the register key because he couldn't cross the break. You know, so I said, well, I think I have something that you might like. So that's how that started. And I've been told by several of the people at the publisher that was a favorite for Lauren, that he was so excited to have some method books that kids could pick up and teach themselves to play, which is what my goal is anytime I write anything, because I was one of those kids. I didn't have access to lessons growing up. I did have a great dance teacher and a great piano teacher, but no clarinet lessons. I didn't have lessons until I got to college. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to present material in a very clear and sequenced fashion so that a kid at home pretty much could figure it out. So, that's what that is. But the break, the other thing that I think is missing, I think there's kind of pretty huge void from beginner to the Rose studies. There's not much in between. So kids need a chance to play something that they're going to struggle with for a while and maybe not sound great. That's to be expected, when you're learning to cross the break. So I explained how to cross the break. I put some exercises in there for them to do that in several different keys. But I also included some great etudes that really do double duty. They go across the break, but the range is not very high. I think the lowest note is, some of them go down to low F, but maybe B flat above the staff is the highest. And it concentrates right in that middle area where you're crossing the break. They're in the classical style. They were written, a long time ago. I'm pretty sure late 1700s maybe. And they were intended for vocal students to learn how to sight read. So they do all of the things that a person would need to have skill-wise to play the Rose studies. You'll see a measure that might start with eighth notes that goes to triplets, then to sixes and back to fours. But the etudes are much shorter. They're like 32 to 34 measures. They're follow the key really closely. Everything about them just screams preparatory for the Rose. So my husband laughs every time I demonstrate one or play one for somebody in these types of interviews. He goes, "Oh, you got your baby Rose out," which is true. And so that was missing in the clarinet repertoire. So that's why I did this book. And also because Lauren, it was so funny when he said, I gave up the clarinet. When we started crossing the break, that was it for me. So it was because maybe he didn't get a good explanation on how to do it. So I think it's a good explanation.
Where can people find the break? Where can they find this book?
You can almost anywhere. I think it's pretty much worldwide. I don't know if it's on Amazon, but it's distributed through Hal Leonard. So wherever people buy Hal Leonard, it's there. I've seen it places in Germany and all different places. So it's pretty much worldwide, but it's distributed through Hal Leonard.
Awesome. Okay, very good. A couple other viewers that are joining us this afternoon. Jay Hassler chimes in and said, it's so true that there is a chasm between the beginners and the Rose etudes. So I think he appreciates your efforts on this.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I'm working on right now. I'll show you my stand. So the next project with Southern, I'm happy to say they are really wanting to beef this up with some stuff. So I'm sitting here looking at, there's a solo that I just finished transcribing and editing and kind of cut the length and adjusted the piano part. And so it turned out pretty good. I call it my pre-Weber concertino. It's not nearly as long and not nearly as hard, but it's going to remind you of Weber. And it's happy and fun and in 3/8 and 6/8 and it follows the F scale and, it's a theme and variations. So I'm looking for stuff like that. I also have a quartet arrangement pending of a great march that's going to be very playable for kids. The third clarinet part stays below the break. 2 and 1 go above the break. Mm-hmm. But it's so cool, very melodic. It's an old favorite, British eighth. And so that's in the works. And several other things that are kind of out of my mind right now. But I'm really dedicating a lot of time to trying to contribute to that because I think that people want music in the classical style that their kids can perform, like in a recital or for, at school for solo and ensemble contest. And, you can't hand an 8th grader the Copeland, unless they started when they were 2, and that's probably not the way it's going to go.
And I think that's a great point. The fact that in addition to method work, there's also a lack of solo material at that level too. And I think that's a great point. We have another viewer joining us, the president and CEO of Buffet Crampon USA, Francois Clock, is tuning in this afternoon. So
that's for Francois.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, thank you. Hey guys, don't forget, sign up, send me an email. We got to have a masterclass winner. Somebody's bound to want a masterclass. So please send me an email. I don't see any yet. So I think all the school people are probably in service or teaching or doing something and don't have time. But send me an email if you would like to have a session for your students, because I would love to do it.
Yeah, we are doing a free giveaway, an online masterclass with Paula Corley, who's joining us on Together at Home today. If you send an entry to paula@clarinetcity.com, we will do a drawing at the end of today's webcast, and Paula will provide a free masterclass for you and your students. And when we were doing the prep before today's webcast, Paula, you brought up a great point. It doesn't necessarily have to be for beginning band students or beginning band programs. It could be for a woodwind methods class at a college or a university. I think that's a terrific idea.
Yeah, and people who are just entering the teaching profession, if you have some buddies, you can get together, just a group of people. So we would like it to go to a school group or a studio, someone that has several people that would benefit from it. So yeah, send me an email. I hope we get a taker, but if we don't, that's okay too. So
we appreciate everybody tuning in this afternoon. Patrick Graham from the Jacksonville Symphony Orchestra just tuned in, and he says to tell you hello. Let's get into our discussion of selecting a step-up clarinet. And before we get into that, I know that we have a very special video that you prepared especially for today's webcast. Do you want to set this up, or do you just want to, what's that?
I'm going to be super famous after this. No, I'm teasing. Okay, so yeah, let's introduce it. So one of the things we're going to talk about is quality. I think that when your students are buying instruments, or when you're trying to convince parents to buy an instrument, the question becomes, what is quality as it applies to clarinet? So we're going to show you something that's going to make a really strong point about why quality is important. So we'll roll that first. So
okay, here we go. That is fantastic. Let's hear it one more time, just to appreciate the greatness of this video. Once again. That is fantastic. That
the bell's a nice touch, right?
Oh, okay. The green is a very nice contrast to the orange. I think that is well done.
And the reason I was telling Matt, the reason why this is important is the number one thing. I think that, let's just say you were talking to someone who has no musical background, and they've got the checkbook that they can write the check to buy the child or your student an instrument. Well, one of the things they need to know is about tone hole placement. There it is, right? There's the reason why you buy a quality instrument, because the tone hole placement and the intonation, for me, I guess in the business we call it the scale, is number one. Well, that's hard to explain to somebody. But if they see the clarinet or something like that, where the scale is all over the place, then they go, oh, well, that doesn't sound right. The reason why the last note was wrong is my husband's drill slipped when he was doing the last tone hole. So it wasn't completely symmetrical. Does that sound familiar? I mean, really. So I'm looking at I want to make sure I get everything I'm supposed to say about the tone hole. It just makes such a huge difference. I was telling Matt, I observed a master class. I did a master class somewhere back in December, which I'm not going to say the school. But let me just say there was a lovely child in this master class, and her instrument was one that I didn't know. And I felt so sorry for her because she didn't blend at all with the section. Her instrument was not sharp or flat. It was just all over the place. And somebody had even put an aftermarket barrel to try to correct it. And it just didn't do anything. And the disappointment and embarrassment of that person in that class was painful for me to watch. And I tried not to say anything. The director wanted me to hear everybody. So when it came to this person's turn, I just smiled and, and I said, oh, I talked about other things other than sound. I mean, what are you going to say? So intonation and tone hole placement, absolutely. The next thing about quality is the board design. I mean, because I think that people who are in the business to make clarinets, and there's a lot of people who make them, know a thing or two about board design. I mean, that's everything. It controls how the instrument sounds and responds and everything about it. Key design, that's a big deal. Okay, how many times have you picked up a clarinet where the keys were set up so high that you felt like you were like having to work to make the instrument play? That's a big deal. That controls someone's ability, especially a younger student, to develop good hand position. If they're having to fight that, then that's going to affect whether or not they're going to be able to cover the holes. They may squeak a lot. The hand position may be off. So I think key design and placement makes a huge difference. The mouthpiece and reed plays a huge role, I think, too, in the sound of the clarinet, but arguably wood versus plastic. Okay. I mean, who knows? Most professionals are going to pick wood. A synthetic horn is okay to start. And I know people turn their noses up at those, but I wouldn't discount those because I think that at that price point, if that's all like a beginner student can afford, do it. But for a professional, yes. I mean, and the wood, does it make a difference what kind? Probably. If you have somebody that is a super player with a lot of finesse and ability, probably. I mean, Matt could probably answer that more than I can because I've seen some boxwood, is that right? Clarinets, and I've seen some different ones. So I think it probably does affect the tone color. Would you say probably the type of wood, does it have an effect?
Sure. In terms of resistance, in terms of the resonance, the density of the wood, all that is going to contribute to
It's going to
tonal quality, right?
Yeah, and even though the person, if they come with their setup, mouthpiece and reed is going to be similar but have different colors. But absolutely wood. Hand finished clarinets are the ultimate. And why should you get a hand finished clarinet? Well, because the discrepancies can be corrected. The products are unique and they have their own character, so to speak. But for me, if you're in a situation where you're trying to educate someone who is a buyer for their student or their child, the number one thing they need to know is about the tone hole placement and intonation of the instrument, because it's everything. And if it's not right, then, there's not much you can do. And again, I just see that young person's face in my mind who was embarrassed in the section because they knew that their instrument was not quality. But you, as a clinician, you can't address that.
Right, exactly.
That's my list.
Well, and of course, you're in arguably the hotbed for instrumental music education in Texas. Texas is long acknowledged as supporting music education like no other place, really, not only in the country, but really in the world. And I know that a lot of students and a lot of band programs start their kids on E11 student clarinets in Texas. And by the time they get into high school, they're ready to step up to a professional instrument. And I think most students and most band programs in Texas, they encourage their students to move up to what? To the R13, is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. They do. A lot of people buy the R13s and a lot of kids start on the E11s. I do see traditions from time to time. I don't see Toscas very often with younger students. So I would say the majority of people choose the R13. I think it's a great choice. I mean, I'm sitting here, I've had several buffet clarinets over the course of my career. The one that I have right now is a Prestige R13, which I absolutely love. And I think the R13s are the cornerstone for me for buffet Crampon, because after all, they've been making those the longest amount of time. So they've had a lot of practice getting them perfect, right?
Right.
So, I mean, really, you know, and they're all a little different, but I mean, the consistency and everything about them, the scale, the intonation, the bore design, everything about it. I mean, for me, it is the ultimate. And I have a Tosca too, which I love, but I prefer the R13 Prestige.
Well, and I was going to ask you about that because I knew you played on Tosca for a while and your current instrument is an R13 Prestige. Those are all part of the R13 bore family, that polycylindrical bore that was designed by Robert Carré in 1955 and has become the kind of the model for the modern clarinet bore design. So you have played on some R13s in your career over the years before you got on your Prestige or your Tosca previously. What initially was it that drew you to the R13, not only as a player, but as an educator and a pedagogue?
Oh, that's a really good question and kind of a funny story. I'll make it brief. In high school, as I said, I came from a very small town, no access to lessons. And when I decided to become a music major in undergraduate school, my teacher said, you know, you really need to think about getting a new clarinet. This one is worn out. And it was not a buffet. I won't say what it was. But anyway, so I said, okay. So I was pretty hard-headed and I thought I knew everything. So off to the music store I go. There was only one in my state at that time, a large one called Wright Music Company. That's going to really date me. And so I went there. I asked to try every clarinet that they had. Mr. Wright, being the smarty pants that he was, and this was kind of funny actually, he made the repairman put tape over the brand names of every instrument in the store so I couldn't see what I was playing because he wanted me to be objective. And so anyway, long day, came back after lunch, had two picked out. I said, I like both of these. Let me make a choice between the two. So I said, at the end, said, I'll take this one. And all the salesmen were there on Saturday and they all started clapping and laughing. And Mr. Wright pulled the tape off and it was an RC, a buffet RC. So that's what I started on. And I picked it because the sound and the response and everything about it and the ease, the key work, everything about it was spectacular. And I played the heck out of that. I kept that horn forever. You know, in fact, I really wish I hadn't sold it. Somebody really wanted it. So I had gotten another one. But that's why I picked it in a blind test with every other brand that they had back then. And there were others out of France at the same time. But that's how I did it. And I've been a buffet fan ever since.
Yeah, those are wonderful instruments. You don't see too many RCs in North America. They're much more popular in Europe. But I've played a few RCs, and again, I'm not a very good clarinet player by any means, but I've always really loved that instrument.
Yeah, it's great. The responses, the bore is a little different, right? And it's a little bigger maybe than the R13.
Well, it's also a polycylindrical bore, but the internal dimensions are a little bit different. So it gets a little different. It's a different blow. It's a different sound. I usually characterize it as a smoother, kind of creamier sound, where the R13 bore design typically has more upper harmonics to the sound, which is what North American players generally like as far as a clarinet sound concept. But I've always been a big fan of the RC instruments. I think they're wonderful clarinets.
Yeah, they really are. But I've stuck with the R13s mostly. I did play when I was in North Carolina. I had a match set of the Tosca B flat and A in the opera. And the reason why you love the Toscas is because for playing in the opera, they were perfect. I mean, one of the things that you have to learn to do, as my friend Howard Klug said, well, Corley, you finally learned how to play in tune, because you have to match the singers, and it just was it was so close. I mean, the scale on that horn is spectacular. And so, and then you have 2 barrels, which is nice. If you had a coal haul and so forth and so on. So they were just absolutely perfect for the opera, and they got quite a workout. So, you know, I still really love those too. But for me, I think the way the R13 feels and where the tone holes are placed and everything with my hands, it's the best match.
Yeah.
So I'm sticking with this one.
How long have you been on your R13 Prestige now?
I got this one in Baton Rouge, and we were there together. And speaking of, we're going to talk about choosing an instrument real quick, but I took a friend of mine who is a dear close friend who's a flutist. And so we went over to Phil Muncie's table. Phil has, believe it or not, I pick instruments for other people, but not for myself. And Phil and I have been friends for way longer than I will say, or he'll get mad at me. So, but anyway, so I had called him about a year ago, and I said, you know, I'm looking to get a new instrument. And I said, I don't care what it is, as long as it's a buffet. I said, just pick one for me that you like. So he did. And he brought him several, but he wouldn't tell me which one that he had picked. He just had them all out there. So I was trying them. And then I put my mouthpiece on this one. And all I did was play a very slow F scale with her sitting next to me. And when I just got to the top of one octave, she cut me off and said, that one. You know, and it felt great. And that was it. So yeah, so Baton Rouge, that hasn't been that long, right? That's how long I've had this one.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was one of the first people in the United States to get a Tosca, actually. Mine was in the first shipment that came over, actually, from the factory.
Wood or green line?
Wood. Mine's are wood.
Okay. Yep. Let's remind our viewers, we are giving away a free online masterclass with Paula Corley today. It's a very simple entry process. All you need to do is send an email to the address that you see that Paula's holding up. It's paula@clarinetcity.com. The subject heading is masterclass, and you need to just give your name and where you're located, where your studio is located. If you want to include any other information in there, that's great as well. We will do the drawing at the end of today's masterclass. The address is also pinned in the webcast comments section. And also encourage and invite you, if you have a question for Paula this afternoon, if you have a question about teaching beginners, teaching college students, selecting an instrument, anything of that nature, please put it in our comments section. I'm keeping an eye on that, and I'll be happy to share that with Paula, and we can discuss it during today's webcast. Paula, we also have some other friends joining in this afternoon. Charlie Caldwell says, hello, Mrs. Corley.
Hi, Charlie. Good to see. I can't see you, but hi.
Yeah, he's joining us, and Samantha Sheets also says hello this afternoon. So
hi, Samantha.
It's good
we
to
need
have
somebody to sign up for the master class, or it's going to go to the Buffet New York showroom because they've already sent in their email. So
yeah, there you go. So that would be okay too. It'd be better if we could do it in person, but that'd be all right.
Yeah, that's great. So yes. Does anybody have no questions yet?
Just hellos. I haven't seen any questions in the comments section. So
I think like I said, I think everybody is like overwhelmed at this time of year with stuff to do.
Well, so let me remind everyone, and we'll talk about this at the end too. All of the webcasts in the Together at Home webcast series are archived not only on our New York Showroom Facebook page, they're also on our new YouTube channel. It's called Rhapsody Live. And at the conclusion of today's webcast, later this afternoon, this webcast will be archived there as well. So if you're not able to watch the entire webcast, if you're joining us late this afternoon and you missed some of the information that we shared earlier, you can go over to the YouTube channel, subscribe. You'll be notified every time we get a new video posted, and you'll be able to watch this webcast or any of our webcasts in their entirety. And we invite you to go over there and check that out. Upgrading a clarinet. When is it time? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's very simple. I think you should consider the work ethic of the player if you're a parent. And certainly if you're a music major and with aspirations to be a teacher, a conductor, or a player, absolutely. You need to have the best possible instrument that you can have. The other factor would be the condition of your current instrument. Some people say they never wear out. And, I would say they probably don't. But I think the difference, there might be some differences in a new versus a very old instrument. At some point, there are probably some maybe pronounced differences in the way they feel and sound. I mean, I just get, at least that's the way it was for me when I get a new horn. So, but definitely work ethic for the younger students, that should be for what you should tell your parents to drive their choice, because the truth of the matter is the saddest thing is to see a kid walk in, and I've had this in when I was in Plano ISD, had a student come in 6th grade, and I forget which model she had at that time, but it was the most expensive, fanciest buffet made. And it had, as I remember, maybe the extension on the bottom, maybe the extra E flat, A flat. I don't remember anyway. That she was a beginner and she really struggled because it was just too much for her. And her grandparents had insisted that she have that instrument. Another kid came in with a gold flute, same story. The parents didn't know, and they had plenty of money, and they just went and bought just tell me which one is the most expensive. Well, it doesn't always work that way. I think you have to think about the age of the student and all that too, but certainly work ethic should drive the decision and the condition of your current instrument. And I've got a big list of to-dos when looking at instruments. Shall we go through that?
Well, I've got a question for you before we get to that, and it's kind of coming from the opposite end. You use the example of the kids coming in with the most expensive instrument. What if you have a parent that has a student that is advancing and growing and improving, and they're ready for an upgrade in their instrument? An R13 is classified as a professional clarinet. And I've had some parents talk to me, and I'd be really interested in your thoughts on this, to where they say, well, my kid he's not going to be a professional, or she's not going to major in music, or not going to be a performance major rather. So when people see that an R13 is classified as a professional instrument, I think some of them think, well, my kid's not a professional player. Why should they have a professional instrument? What's your response to a parent when they have a question or a concern like that?
I would go back to the very same thing, work ethic, because now you have high school players that are incredible. So you're going to give them the best laptop, right? With all the stuff that they need to access information to get into Harvard or Yale or whatever. So that same kid is probably working really hard to play Copeland or to audition for an all-state band or orchestra, and they love to play. So the fact that it's a professional instrument, that's just giving them the best equipment that they can possibly have at that moment to make it fun for them, because some of the best players that I've ever come across are kids that didn't major in music. I'll give you an example. I just sent one to the University of South Florida. She's a National Merit Scholar. She got a full ride, and she's doing biomedical engineering, one of the most naturally gifted students I've ever had. So her parents wanted to make sure she had everything. She started on an E11. When we got to marching band, we got a prodige for marching band. And then also at the same time, Matt was with me in Dallas at a clarinet event. I picked out an R13 for her. So she had 3 clarinets, because the mother she just really wanted her daughter to have everything that she needed. So that's what I would tell any parent with a kid that has an excellent work ethic and that is a good player, that would actually play the instrument, practice, and work. They deserve one. They absolutely deserve a professional instrument, because it's going to make it a lot more fun for them. And in that, at the end of the day, what's the most important thing is if they are enjoying it.
That's a terrific answer. We have some questions from the comments section.
Yay.
Jay Hassler poses a question. How would you characterize to a parent the move from a plastic student rental clarinet to an upgrade to an E11 or directly to an R13 or something on that level? And he's thinking of a 7th or an 8th grader.
That's a really good question. And, I don't know what state he's in, but if he's doing marching band, I always tell the parents that you cannot use the same instrument for indoor and outdoor activities. So that's the number one thing to find out. That's the best selling point, because the reality is, if the kids are taking that instrument outdoors, whether it's synthetic or wood or whatever, it's going to get worn out. It's going to get dropped. Somebody else is going to touch it or handle it. And, all kinds of things can go wrong. So if marching band is a part of their life, they absolutely need another instrument that's not going to be taken outside. And then again, going up, if the kid, it's work ethic, and if you have them play for the parents and you're there, you can say, hey, listen to her, listen to him. This is like really advanced stuff. And let's go to the music store and let's look at some instruments and let's see if a better instrument makes a difference in their ability to play. Well, of course it is. Because the first thing the kid's going to say is they're going to turn to their mom and say, wow, mom, dad, this is great. This is so much easier. And I think that really is your best way of convincing the parents to let them hear and see and get input from their student. Because most parents won't say no. They want to do everything they can for their students to be successful.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you. Francois Clock is chiming in with a question this afternoon.
Uh-oh.
No, this is a good question. Paula, what do you think is the best exercise for a student to work on being stuck at home right now in order to stay in shape, but also to make sure that they are ready to go play with others when they can again?
Oh, that's so good. It's funny, Francois, everybody has their own idea about how this should be done. For me, I don't have it on my stand, but it's on my site. I put together the patterns, I call it patterns that matter. And so I took patterns, little snippets from the greats. Bayerman interrupted pattern, thirds are a good foundation. Extended scales, not playing tonic to tonic, but 1 to 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3, introducing the minor sound. And so I put together 2 pages in each key. To me, I identified the patterns that matter the most for a high school or an undergraduate student. Certainly, if you're someone like, I don't want to use any names, but some of the best professional players in the world have the luxury of practicing 8 hours a day. They can be very practice specific and have like one whole book of scales, one whole book of intervals, one whole book of staccato studies. But just for the general person, I would tell them to look for, and there are a number of them, scale books that are out there that are, again, geared toward a little bit of everything, a little bit of interval, intonation, and they do exist. They're kind of hard to find. That's why I put together my own. But there are others out there as well. So I would say a little bit of everything to work on a lot of different things to keep yourself ready to play. And I'm speaking to those who would be not Boris Alakavanian, and not the people at the top of John Manassi, they're going to do a lot of different things. But just for the general player, there just needs to be a little bit of a lot of things to address as many things as you can, but not to an extreme, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. Great question and great answer. Let's remind everybody, we are doing a giveaway this afternoon. Paula has graciously offered a free online masterclass that she is offering. Yeah, all you have to do, send an email to that address, paula@clarinetcity.com. In the subject heading, put masterclass, give your name, give your school, and she will do a free online masterclass for you and your students. All you have to do is send her an email. It's that easy. And we're going to do a drawing in about the next 10 minutes or so. And I'm telling you right now, if you don't send in an entry for this, you're missing out, because Paula is the authority on clarinet fundamentals and clarinet pedagogy. You're rolling your eyes, but you know it's true. You know it's true.
Well, if you say it, yeah, actually, people ask me the question, what is the nicest thing that anybody's ever said to me as a professional person? And it came from you, Matt. And it was when we were in Dallas and you were in this big room with all the buffet people. And I walked in the door and it was real quiet in there. There wasn't anybody trying instruments. There were several of the buffet staff in there. And all of a sudden I heard this beautiful deep voice as I walked through the door and you said, "All rise." And
I remember that.
Honestly, that's the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me. I thank you. Thank you. That's all.
You know how sincere I am. You know how much
I do. And I appreciate being appreciated. It's always been a thing for me. Like I said in my bio on my site, I became fascinated with helping people like me who grew up like I did without access to, teaching. And I had an instrument that was kind of worn out all the way through high school. I don't even know how I got in All-State with that instrument. But I learned to play. And then I got a buffet, which is great. But I have a thing. That's why I outlined what Francois' question about practice. Most people fall into that category of, I want to be good at it and I love to play, but I probably won't be the next principal in this orchestra or, be Eddie Daniels or whoever, playing jazz. Most people don't fall into that category. Felix, he practices a lot. So it's good to have a good overview, I guess, of things to work for.
Yeah, definitely. We've got another question from our comments section. Somebody named Jordan Olinsky is chiming in, and I'm teasing.
No.
Next.
No,
Jordan Olinsky is our Southwest division manager. He's based in Houston. He is Paula's division manager for Texas, and we're teasing. Paula and Jordan are very close. And Jordan has a very good question this afternoon. What is your break-in process, or how do you advise your students when breaking in their first wood clarinet? What are some of the pointers that you give them?
That's a really good question. I think that you have to go slowly. I learned this, I'll tell you what I learned from Phil Muncie, because he knows a thing or two about this. I think that you start by playing the instruments just a few minutes every day. So let's just say when I got this Prestige, I still had my Tosca. So I would play the first week like 10 minutes on it, swab it real good. One of the things that is normal with a professional instrument, the barrel got a little wonky, was stuck a little bit. And so, and I didn't push it all the way in. Phil said, don't force it. He said, let the instrument get used to being in Texas. So we waited. The next week, 15 minutes. The week after, 20 minutes. And I would say probably 6 weeks, of small increments, like going up a little bit every time. And then, then you just make sure you swab it when it's new and don't let water sit inside the bore. Then after about 6 weeks, I wouldn't advise anybody to do this, but my barrel was still not going all the way. So my husband had some he's got a doctorate in music, so he's not a dummy, but he had some really fine sandpaper. And he said, you're not going to do this. I'm going to do this. So he sat next to me and he took the paper and put it on the inside of the barrel and went around one time. Try it. Didn't get, so it only took like 3 swipes of one circle inside that barrel. It fit perfectly. Never any trouble since then. So those are the kinds of things that you have to be real careful. You don't want to force joints, and you want to give the instrument time. As Phil used to say, it doesn't know that it's not a tree anymore, and it's got to get used to that. So I'd be very careful, especially with an R13.
It's funny Phil said that's similar to what I tell a lot of new owners, is that it's still figuring out how to be a clarinet when you're first breaking it in. And the wood is going to change. It's going to move, it's going to swell, it's going to contract. And I think a 6-week time frame is terrific. I think that's, because you really are, as Phil said, it doesn't know it's not a tree anymore. It's
Right.
learning how to be a clarinet. It's an organic material. It's porous, it moves, it changes, it flexes, it swells, it contracts, and you have to give it time to figure out how to become a clarinet.
Absolutely. It's really important. There are a couple, I mean, I do want to mention a couple of things for those people that are getting kids to upgrade. One of the things I want you to do is encourage them when they go to the store, not to walk in and say, I want an R13 and have the person put the instrument down and they pay for it and leave. They need to try the instruments, and they need to take their own mouthpiece and read with them to the music store. This is just very basic information for your students. They need to take their own setup. You want to reduce the variables. So use the same mouthpiece and reed that you had on your older one. Try as many clarinets as you can. Exactly what I did. Here's something pretty important. I wouldn't ask for any information about the instruments until you've narrowed your choices, if that makes sense. Again, that's reducing the variables, trying to keep everything very objective. You always have the choice to walk away from a high pressure salesperson. There are so many great people that sell instruments. And so, just take your time, but I wouldn't ask for too much information. I would always seek an outside opinion. And if you can, get somebody to go with you, like I did Allison, my friend who was sitting next to me when I bought my Prestige, who can listen to you play, compare your current instrument to the one you're considering. And if possible, just turn your back so no one knows what you're playing, or go behind a screen if you can. Keep it all very objective when you're doing that. The one other thing that I want to caution people about, when you're buying an instrument from an individual who is selling an instrument, be sure you ask a lot of questions. And if you don't know what questions to ask, you should contact a repairman in your area to ask them what you need to ask about the instrument. Maybe the person selling it will allow you to take it in and let it be looked at. I'm not going to tell you horror stories over the years about people who have bought instruments from individuals who were not truthful, and the person was unknowing and they paid a lot of money for something that was not very good, and end of story. So ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, I think those are all terrific points. I think one thing that you and I have discussed previously, and you used a great example of just walking into a store and say, I want an R13. Okay, here's an R13, here's my credit card, and you walk out the door. Buying a clarinet is not like buying a computer or a television. And you and I have both had experiences, whether it's at Clarinet Fest, whether it's at TMEA, to where you have a student come in and play, let's say, 8 R13 clarinets. And what's your experience as far as what happens with those students and what they're experiencing with playing 8 of the same model?
That's a really good question, because for myself personally, I've done that. And so many of them are so good and so close that it's really hard to make a decision. Hopefully one will feel better than the other. But again, by taking your own mouthpiece and read, that's going to have as much to do with how the instrument feels and responds and sounds as the instrument itself. So in that case, I would have a clarinet person who is a teacher or a band director or someone who actually knows the instruments and can play them some, to try it as well. With this instrument that I bought for you guys in Dallas, you brought it from Jacksonville. It was out of your stash. If you remember, you were laughing at me because I went and got Andre Moissan, Larry Guy, and Greg Radin. And Matt said, "Man, you were so funny." You said, "Why are you doing that, Paula?" And I said, "Because I want to be sure. I want to be sure." And so that instrument is spectacular, and it's still spectacular. So I would say take somebody with you that knows if you need help doing that.
I think that's a great point. And I think the point that we really need to drive home with anyone that's looking at purchasing a new R13 or any other instrument is that the instruments are all a little different because of that organic quality. It's a wood instrument. Even though they're all the same model, they're all going to have different personalities and different playing characteristics. And Paula made a point earlier in our webcast. It is so important to be able to play as many clarinets as you can. And we're talking about any musical instrument, not just clarinets. They all have personalities. They're all a little bit different. And I liken it to test driving a car. You would never buy a car without test driving it first. And it's the same comparison with a clarinet, an R13, or any other musical instrument. You're making a substantial financial investment in this instrument. You want to make sure you get it right. And that's exactly why you had all those colleagues try the instrument at that time. And I remember that very well. I remember that vividly. I hadn't thought about that in a while.
Because that's an expensive investment. And this young lady is the one who is the National Merit Scholar, the biomedical free ride person. And she ended up being in the All-State Band 2 years. She missed it her senior year by 1. But she, like I said, very Region Orchestra, all this stuff, and it was important to me that I made the right decision because it was somebody else's money, because if it was my money and I made a mistake, it's not a big deal. But anyway.
Now, is she going to continue playing at South Florida?
She said no for the time being. I think that since they're all virtual there, and she's the first in her family to go that far away to school, and we're good friends, so I'll stay in touch with her. She said not at first. And also the scene here is pretty competitive, and she came out of a really competitive program, which she loved, and she was drum major and all that stuff. But I think she's just going to try to get used to the new environment, for a while. But she'll always play, and she plays piano really well too.
Sure. I was going to suggest she get in touch with Buffet Crampon clarinet artist Calvin Falwell, who's the clarinet professor at USF. I'm sure he'd be very interested in talking to her.
Yeah, she's a good player. She's a good player and wonderful girl.
We're coming up on the top of the hour. We do have a couple of other comments and questions, and they've come in from Francois Clock again. He has 2 questions for you. The first one is, a few years ago, you went to France for a project with us. And for those of you that maybe don't know, there's a video series that Paula did on clarinet fundamentals. And but Francois is asking, what was your best memory of your visit in Paris?
Wow, Al's coming in the door. I should ask him. We were just overwhelmed. I think for me, there were so many things, but I would have to say that going to the factory, truthfully, and I had no idea how many hours went into producing an instrument. And it was fascinating. My husband's dad was a woodworker. So he knew all the questions to ask. And, they were so kind. It's like 5 hours it took us. We met everybody. And that was life-changing for me, watching the testers and how carefully they decide even where the logo goes. I mean, it was like, wow. So for me, that was probably the highlight. However, there were many. I loved being in the recording studio. I had a great sound guy. We're still friends on Facebook and video. Great guy. It was a lot of fun. The wine. Oh my goodness. Why is the wine in France? Why does it taste so much better than what we have in the United States? And it was fun going in these places because there were people sitting at a table and they would just try to get me to talk. I guess because maybe I sound Southern. I don't know that I do, but I could never make bonjour sound right. Everybody would laugh when I would say that. So that was fun. Notre Dame, we got to do a lot. I mean, it was a life-changing experience for us, for both of us. And we would have never have gotten to go otherwise. So I will always have a lot of gratitude for being chosen to do that.
Yeah, getting to go in the factory really is, it will change you, seeing the care and the love and the passion
Absolutely.
that is put into these. I mean, this is my personal R13 here that I've had for many, many years. And it's to be able to experience that and to see how much skill and history there is there with these instruments. I mean, since 1825.
Exactly.
It really is. It's kind of hallowed ground musically, isn't it?
It is. And the people that were in those jobs that maybe the grandfather started and then the dad had the job and, it was passed down. It was just, I had no idea. We had no idea. But
Yeah.
it really just reinforced and for me what playing these instruments is all about. So
Yes.
it's great.
Oh yeah. Speak of the devil, Cecilia Kang is joining us this afternoon.
He's my buddy.
Of course, Cecilia just got a little bit closer to you. Cecilia was the clarinet professor at Furman University in South Carolina, and she just recently started her new assignment at Louisiana State University.
He's a raging Cajun.
Well, wait a minute. I thought that was the...
Isn't that right?
Well, that's the Tigers, the Bayou Bengal Tigers, LSU.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, okay. But don't they, that's what, at State, that's what we called them. I mean, we played them in football and they rolled over us, but not so much we kind of gone back and forth, but yeah, I have a lot of memories of going to LSU's campus.
I'm glad you brought up college football. Do you have your cowbell handy?
I don't. Al would kill me. Actually, I think he stole it and he put it in the storeroom.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, I think he did because I annoyed him. Of course, when State plays, it just isn't. Yeah, but I mean, I can tell you that going in that stadium at State and those cowbells, it's like nothing you have ever experienced in your life. And I did wear earplugs, and all the directors there wear earplugs, but it's unbelievable. The spirit.
Well,
and
tell everybody, for those people that aren't familiar with what we're talking about, they're tuning in going, why are they talking about cowbells? Give them a little history on what the significance of the cowbell is.
State was
Mississippi State.
A&M, like Texas A&M. It was agricultural and mechanical college. So back in the day, in the early 1900s, I suppose, people made fun of Mississippi State because they would say that's where all the farmers went to school. Well, as we know, that farming is a pretty big, important thing. So they made fun of that. Then they started calling State Cow College. And especially the people at Ole Miss did that. Sorry, and I have a lot of friends at Ole Miss. My mom went to Ole Miss, so I can say that. And my niece went to Ole Miss. So, but they called us Cow College. And so I guess folks got tired of hearing it. So they just brought those cowbells. And it's just stuck and it will never go away.
I didn't know the story behind that. I'd always, whenever I saw Mississippi State playing home games and would hear those cowbells, and I was always wonder what the background of that was. And I've already learned something today. That's fantastic. So, and I'm sorry that Al hid your cowbell.
Yeah, next time.
Yeah,
next time.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, you should commission a piece for clarinet and cowbell.
That's a good idea. I think I am going to be doing one more with the very talented Michael Markowski. And so I'll tell him to find a spot for a cowbell in there. He probably would be all about that.
You could have a guest soloist. Will Ferrell could come in and play cowbell along.
Hey, you never know. Oh, if you just be nice to people, you just never know. They usually say yes.
That's right. That's exactly right. We're well past an hour, which is great. We're going to wrap things up here in just a minute. I do want to give another hello to a viewer, Melanie Wong, who is formerly of our Buffet Crampon New York showroom and is now with RDG Woodwinds in Los Angeles. She's tuned in and she says to tell you hello this afternoon.
Excellent.
And Cecilia chimes in, go LSU. Thanks for the shout out. That's good. So Cecilia, we're glad you're tuning in this afternoon. You look like you're looking at some
I am. And actually, I'm sorry to say, we didn't have any groups write in, but we did have a gentleman, which I will be in contact with him. And I'll probably say his name wrong, Fred Shanebaum. And so I will contact Fred and we'll do a Zoom session for him. And I'm sorry we didn't have any schools. I mean, it's the time of year. People are busy and they just missed it.
Yeah, well, congratulations to Fred. And Fred, thank you for joining us this afternoon. You will get so much out of your time with Paula when you guys set that up.
And I will send you an email. So be watching for that and we'll get something set up on Zoom. Absolutely.
Very good. Before we wrap things up, what's next for Paula Corley?
That's a good question. So I have 16 applied students at the university this year. That's a pretty full load, trying to get them scheduled. Again, I'm working on
university.
Yeah, and then I've got some projects with Southern music. Like I said, we're trying to fill in the gap between the beginner and the row studies to add more to the repertoire. Not just stuff that I'm coming up with, but I'm actively talking to some other people about contributing, of people I've heard pieces that I like that they have arranged. So I'm working with them to build that up. And then that pretty much takes up most of my time. And then just like everybody else, trying to stay positive, take care of each other, wear a mask. I'm lucky because I teach in a place where our administration does not want anybody exposed. So the applied teachers are not even allowed on campus. And the kids are only allowed to take one 30-minute session at a time. And they're going to be an assigned room, and they have all these cleaning protocols. They do their 30-minute lesson, then the room has to be ventilated for 1 hour before anybody else can go in. And they're really following these guidelines. So we're hoping that works. And the ensemble's the same way. The kids are going to be 7.5 feet apart. That's a big space. So they're all going to be in chamber groups this semester, and maybe into the spring. We're still planning to do Clarinet works. We've still got it on the books for the spring. Who knows? I mean, it's not looking good, but we've got that set up for April the 10th. And we'll know more as the semester progresses. Yeah. But yeah, and then other than that, cook every meal. We don't go out much. We're just hanging out in the, outskirts in the country near Wimberley, Texas, and making the best of it.
I forgot to mention earlier, Jessica Harry chimes in and says to tell you hello. We also had a comment from Charlie Caldwell that says Dr. Corley is also a great cook.
He is.
You're a great cook.
Yeah, well, I'm getting better, but yeah, Al's cobbler is like, I made it famous in the Van Doren video because I think of anything other analogy that they asked me a question about the mouthpiece I played. I said, well, it's the best thing since my husband's peach cobbler, which is true. So yeah, Al absolutely is the cook of the family. I'm getting better though. I'm getting better.
I'm sure you do great. Tell everybody one more time about your website, where they can find out more about your method books and clarinet works and find out more about Paula.
Absolutely. clarinetcity.com. I have an enormous amount of free stuff on there. One of the things that you definitely want to check out if you're a teacher, I have a whole page of videos, no charge. They're samples from the project I did with Buffet Crampon in Paris. And right now I'm featuring beginners. So I have 5 or 6 videos about how to put cork grease on your horn, how to swab, how to form an embouchure, things that are very important to teachers right now. And it's all free on that page. Francois asked about scales. I do have my scale book up as a digital download if you're interested in that, of the patterns that I think matter most to clarinet people that they should be practicing. It's a little bit of everything, a little bit of everything. So come see me at clarinetcity.com. And Fred, you'll be hearing from me.
Clarinetcity.com. Awesome. Before we wrap up this afternoon, I do want to tell everyone joining us today the Together at Home webcast series continues next week and continues into September. We've had so much fun doing these webcasts that we're just going to keep doing them even if there is no pandemic going on. I hope you'll join us on the Buffet Crampon New York showroom page next week. We will have Kristen Moore from Powell Flutes. She will be hosting Christina Smith, Powell flute artist, and the topic next week will be precious metal flutes, which I think I'm very interested in learning more about that and how the different materials can affect the sound and the response of the flute. That will be next Thursday. That's August 27th, same time, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. We really hope that you will join us then. And we have a full slate of webcasts coming up in September. I'll be back with you on September 10th. I'll be talking about Buffet Crampon saxophones, student through professional instruments. And my special guest will be Lauren Sevian, who is our saxophone artist in New York City. Notably plays with the Charles Mingus Big Band, and she is a force to be reckoned with on the saxophone. And I'm very excited about talking to her. That will be September 10th in, what is that, about 2 weeks? 2 weeks? 3 weeks? I'm losing track of time. So I hope you'll join us for that. Paula, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It is always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure talking to you about food, clarinet, wine, bourbon, whatever. But you've given us so much great information. Again, Paula's website is clarinetcity.com if you have any other needs from her. Anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up today?
No, thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun, and it's great to connect visually with you, and hopefully some of the things I said made sense. And again, just send me an email. I'm always around, and I do answer my emails.
Very good. All right, everybody, thank you for tuning in this afternoon, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Stay healthy and stay well.